Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
It's hard to believe, but it's true. Even the liberal media was shocked Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners and illegal aliens.
Every transgender inmate would have access.
Kamala's for they, them. President Trump is for you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
The villain is here. Even if Big Pharma isn't actively doing this for the crass commercial reasons, to go down the road of transgenderism requires enormous, continuous, profitable Big Pharma intervention. And when you remind people of that, you sort of, again, realign who the bad guy is here. And that's a very interesting point I think we forget. What do you think of this new style? And I've even seen it in the courts. And even in Ontario, lawyers are, I don't know if they're being compelled, but they're being asked by the Law Society to put their pronouns in their signature on their email. What do you make of that move to having everyone declare their pronouns? Is that's somewhat related to transgenderism? Do you have an opinion on that? I haven't heard you talk about that.
I do have an opinion on this, of course. So pronouns are kind of like the gateway drug to this. As soon as you acknowledge that you should be declaring your pronouns or asking other people's pronouns, and the British Columbia Law Society, for example, now requires that every court case that all participants in the court hearing declare their pronouns. We should never do it, challenge them on this. But this is lending credence to this regressive ideology teaching that our children are born wrong. So we shouldn't play along with any of it. I refuse to play along with any of it. And in fact, earlier this year, I misgendered one of the Australian top authorities working for their LGBTQ organizations, a woman named Teddy Cook, who was appointed to the World Health Organization to draft healthcare policy for trans-identified kids and adults. I, quote unquote, misgendered her. I called her a female because she is. And they ordered my post taken down by X. So I filed an appeal, and I'm now suing the Australian government. I've got 5 days of court from March 31st to April 4th next year. Elon Musk also filed an appeal for my post. So this is a big freedom of speech case going on in Australia. And so, yes, to answer your question, I do think the pronouns are a big deal, and we should never play along with any of it. I'm really thankful for these opportunities. I get all sorts of messages from people even a year later because they're still watching this podcast on our YouTube channel.
Right.
I spoke at the UN before the Human Rights Council a few months ago in Geneva. And what's really interesting about that is it's the same anywhere in the world. It's a small minority pushing this agenda, even through the UN. Conservatives, we tend to look at the UN and say that's one big evil organization. And by and large, I'd say, yes, they're doing a great amount of harm, for example, through pushing what they call CSE, comprehensive sex education, into all the schools. But again, it's a minority of people in the UN pushing it. I gave this talk there. I only had 90 seconds, but immediately someone from one of the prominent member states came and spoke to me out in the common area. They didn't even know this was going on, and they're supportive of what I'm doing. I had a lot of support down in the UN cafeteria. I met with representatives of various member states, including the representative for the Vatican. He's, of course, supportive of what I'm doing. So we just need to keep getting the message out there, and we need to give the people the words of how to speak about this where they're not afraid of being called some bigot. We need to breathe courage into them, and we do that through education. So I'm just going to keep going, and I know we're having tremendous success. I can see my fingerprints kind of all over the internet these days with the way people talk about this issue. So I know when I'm old, I'm going to have a lot of fun stories to tell, but I'm proud of what's been done. But the battle has really only just begun because we still have to stop this policy-wise all across the West.
You know, you're talking about some of the changes made in some of the states you're in. I know the Alberta government has brought in a policy basically banning transgenderism from women's sports. And I think that's so important because I've been watching in Ontario as ordinary women and mums of girls have tried to fight back against transgenderism, and they get smashed. Anyone who dares stand up to it, they get singled out, demonized, and canceled, and it's brutal. So Good luck for that. I mean, you're built for fighting, Chris, and I suppose I am too. But normal people are just normal people. They just want to go play girls rugby or something, or girls volleyball. So you can't expect an ordinary person who is risk averse and maybe not skilled in conflict to stand up and fight. But when someone like the Premier of Alberta says, I'm going to make the decision on behalf of everyone, no genetic men playing in girls' sports or in girls' bathrooms. I'm just taking the heat so no moms have to, so no girls have to. And the relief and the liberation of hundreds or thousands of women and girls, because I know, for example, in the case in Ontario, there's a 50-something-year-old man, male to female transgender, who swims against girls, like actually teenage girls, and changes in the change room with them. Most of the moms are terrified to speak out. So they're not happy about this. They don't accept this. They're terrified and they don't dare speak out. Whereas if you had the Premier speaking out for them, they wouldn't have to fight. I think that's such an important thing.
Yeah, that's right. So this has been one of my messages the whole time. This is a winning political issue. But I find with Canadian politicians in particular, they're very afraid of what the leftist media is going to say.
Yeah.
We need to stop worrying about them.
Yeah.
Look at the United States. Of course, the protesters there are extremely loud too. But the number one issue affecting swing voters that caused them to vote Republican was the transgender issue.
You know, that's right.
Even Kamala Harris stopped talking about it.
I remember she complained in particular that the Republicans spent over $100 million on a trans ad. Here, let me just remind people, it was a very effective ad. And you can see that it's one of the things, judging by the context of this ad, it feels like they were targeting in part Black and Latino voters who did move over to Republicans. Here, take a look.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
It's hard to believe, but it's true. Even the liberal media was shocked Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners and illegal aliens.
Every transgender inmate would have access.
Kamala's for they, them. President Trump is for you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Well, Chris, I'm excited about 2025. You have truly argued every argument from every angle, and you've even suffered physical attacks for it. I think you have such credibility on this issue. You've suffered for it, and you have so much wise advice. I'm really glad to see, whenever I see you popping up in a different city, I know that you're there on this good mission. I wish you good luck in 2025. What's the best way for people to follow you? Is there a website or an organization, or even if it's just your Twitter account, how can people stay in touch with what you're doing?
Yeah, follow me on X, Instagram, YouTube now, pretty much all of the social mediums. At Billboard Chris. I have a website, billboardchris.com. People can support me. And coming up in the new year, I'm also launching a nonprofit. Now, this nonprofit will be based in the States, but I've gotten an excellent board that I've assembled, and we're going to be able to do a lot of big things. So I'm very excited.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that. And America is such an important battleground. And as America goes, so much of the world goes too, especially if Canadian politicians are a little bit timid. Maybe they need to see courage in the form of an example south of the border. I'm delighted to hear it. On the ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. Members get instant access to all of our shows, invitations to exclusive events, and access to our premium content like live event footage and documentaries you won't see anywhere else. Only Rebel News Plus members can join the conversation by participating in the comments section of our new website. That way you can have your say too. More than anything, though, you'll be able to take pride in supporting real, honest journalism, and you'll help our talented team continue to do the work to push back on the establishment. We really can use your help. We need it, in fact. So thank you, and enjoy Rebel News Plus.